Sealing ducts in a mobile home is one of the best ways an installer can save energy. The duct system in mobile homes are usually fairly simple. In a single wide mobile home, we usually have one single trunk line that runs the length of the mobile home. The HVAC system is installed directly on top of that. In a double wide mobile home, we actually have another trunk line on the other side of the mobile home. That needs to be connected in order to have conditioned air flow between both sides of the mobile home. And that connection is called a crossover duct. Occasionally we'll find more than one crossover duct under a mobile home. Most mobile homes don't have return air ducts. They just use the top of the air handler unit as the return duct, but occasionally they will use the underfloor belly floor cavity as the return duct, or occasionally they'll actually use the attic cavity as a return duct. These are particularly problematic because they're very well connected to outdoors, so they cost a lot of money to run those houses, and there's indoor air quality issues associated with that. There are 5 important areas to seal in a mobile home duct system. Number 1 is the furnace to trunk line connection. This is the point of highest pressure and tends to leak the most. Often in a double wide, the crossover is installed directly below the furnace, and so the crossover becomes high on your list for sealing also. I'd say it's the number 2 one to look at, but of course it's not in a single wide mobile home. The number 3 area to focus on is the branch ducts. Anytime there's a duct coming off the main trunk line, the connection there is important to seal. The number 4 and 5 are the boot to floor connection and the boot to trunk line connection. These leak also. The materials installers use to seal ducts are duct mastic and 2-part foam. Duct mastic is a latex-based material that we embed in fiberglass tape to seal the hole. Most often we use it inside the home, but we can also use it outside the home. We also use 2-part foam to seal ducts, but for safety, we only use it outdoors. Our technician Jake is working on the most important thing to seal on a mobile home duct system. It's the furnace to trunk line connection. It's the point of highest pressure in the duct system, therefore it'll leak the most. Jake has had to cut through the underbelly material there and access the bottom of the main trunk line. Then he cut a 3-sided cut in that and folded back a section of the main trunk line so he could access where the furnace connects to the main trunk line. Now he's using mastic and embedding that in some fiberglass tape and making a nice tight seal on that furnace to main trunk line connection. The working conditions down here are quite difficult. You can see that Jake's laying on his back. He doesn't have much room, but he's doing a good job. This is one of the most important parts of sealing a mobile home duct system. It's the number 1 place to seal is the furnace to trunk line connection. Our installer Lee is going to go ahead and seal the crossover duct on this double wide mobile home with some 2-part foam. This is an atypical crossover duct. They're using some wood and metal for a duct. Typically we see on a mobile home crossover duct is usually a what's called a flex duct. It's sort of a flexible plastic that goes from underneath the furnace over to the other trunk line. Lee's going to go ahead and actually seal this trunk line where it leaks. He's applying the 2-part foam. He's insulating the duct and sealing it at the same time. You can still see somewhat of a crack there, but that'll expand shortly and seal up the cracks in the trunk line. Now he's going for the crack underneath. He's also, again, using the foam to insulate the bottom of the duct, which is important also to have an insulated duct. The two-part foam will come out and harden within 45 seconds. Lee's also using his personal protection gear. He has to have a special mask, filters on his mask to handle the gases that come off the two-part foam. Once he's done with that, the foam will expand and harden in less than a minute, and it will seal our duct up nice and tight. Our installer Ross is gaining access to the branch duct here to seal the branch duct. He needs to cut a hole into the lower portion of the trunk line so he can access where the branch duct and the trunk line intersect. So he's going to go ahead and make that access point right now. This access panel is usually a three-sided cut in the bottom of the trunk line, and we fold the panel out of our way. Sometimes he has to use more than one tool to get that to finish that. You can see it's quite a job. One, there's often things in the way, and he has to work safely so he doesn't cut himself on the sharp metal. You can also see Ross is wearing his personal protection equipment. He's got a full face mask. You can get a lot of stuff in your eyes. He's using a mirror and his flashlight. He's able to inspect with his mirror. There may be other problems with the duct, so he can see in both directions, but also he's looking directly at the connection of the branch duct to the main trunk line and looking at what work he has to do there. Okay, Ross is getting ready to seal the branch duct. He's put his access hole in there, and now he's grabbing some mastic. This is a latex-based mastic. It's sort of like mashed potato-like substance. It comes out of the bucket wet. He wears gloves to protect his hands from getting too much on there. This mastic will stick to just about anything but plastic. So he's embedding the mastic in the cracks of the branch duct to the main trunk line, and then he will actually embed a piece of fiberglass tape into his mastic because of the movement of the metal. When the ducts heat up, the two pieces of metal move at a different rate, and this mesh tape will assure that the seal stays when the two ducts start to move, the two different places where it comes together there. So he's placing the tape up into the mastic, and he's embedding the tape in the wet mastic that he has between the trunk line and the branch duct. Sometimes it takes a little more mastic to fully embed that tape. This does a great job of sealing all the holes in the ducts. It's quite a messy job, but it does what we need to do. And he's just double checking his work with a mirror. And now he's going to go ahead and close up the access point that he's made in the lower part of the trunk line. He's going to fold back the three-sided cut he made there and flatten that out. He's going to be careful not to injure himself on the sharp metal. He's going to go ahead and install some mastic on the back side of his patch that he's going to put on his access point here to make his access point as airtight as possible. He kind of pre-installs the mastic on there, and he will place that on the lower part of the trunk line and screw it into place. It can be quite a messy job, so he's actually got several layers of gloves on, so he can take one glove off that has mastic on it and have a clean hand to operate his drill. He's placed some screws up on the cinder block there, so he has them readily accessible, and now he's going to attach the patch to the lower part of the trunk line. We usually put a screw in about one every 1 to 2 inches and make sure that that mastic does a little squeeze out so that we're assured that the patch is doing the job for us. If he's concerned that his patch isn't taking so well, or it's not conforming well to the bottom of the trunk line, he will go ahead and seal the edges of that patch with mastic and embed some fiberglass tape in that edge of that patch if he thinks he needs to. Now we'll have our installer Lee show you how to seal a duct with duct mastic. He's going to work on the boot to floor connection and the boot to trunk line connection.
Where the duct connects to the floor through a boot. It's a short length of duct that goes from the ductwork to the floor, and a lot of times the boot is not sealed to the duct or to the floor very well, and you get a lot of leaks. So for any gap that's about 1/4 inch or larger, we use strips of mesh tape, and we go over the large gaps, and then we use this mastic to smear and fill in the mesh tape. So I'm just going to connect these to all the seams that I can see that are bigger than 1/4 inch. And then use big scoops with my hands and just smear it over. And any gap that's smaller than that, I can simply smear without the mesh tape and just cover any seam, any small seam. And after I'm done, I can use an inspection mirror to shine and check my work.
Sometimes we need to seal the main trunk line at the end. So our installer Ross is cutting some fiber mesh tape and sizing it to the end of the trunk line. This one was rather leaky. Visually we saw that there were holes. We also, with our diagnostic testing, we found that this area leaked in the trunk line, and it's at the end. He's going to go ahead and embed that fiberglass tape in mastic, and we're just sealing the end of the trunk line. If we're unable to reach the end of the trunk line, because often the end of the trunk line runs past the register, maybe by 8 to 10 feet, we can seal the end from underneath, but a quicker way to do it is to put a block right where Ross is, right at the register. It's easier to do that from inside than going underneath the mobile home, opening up the underbelly and fixing the end. Often we'll just put a block right there and cut the leftover duct off and seal it right where Ross is with a physical block in the duct. But this one, the end is right under his knees there, and so it's easy to access, and we'll be able to seal it real well right there. Duct sealing is one of the fastest ways to improve the energy performance of a mobile home. It does two things for us. It stops conditioned air from leaking to outside, and it slows infiltration, which improves indoor air quality.